Hey everybody, this is Peter Palmiotti of Untitled Studios, and this is Making Comics and Art, episode 163. And today with me, we have Ryan Drost.
Drost. It's Drost.
Drost.
So it's long O, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I always know when telemarketers are calling me because they always say, "Is Ryan Drost there?" I'm like, "There's no one here by that name."
So please go away.
Right.
Oh, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So yeah, you I'll just mention to the audience, like, you sent me a digital copy of the first issue, and I sat down to read the first part. Like there's a split into two different stories there, and first part covers like her origin saga, and it was really cool. It was really fun.
Yeah, that's all we're trying to do. We're trying to tell a fun story. So like, yeah, it was interesting because we did. I started a few years ago with an artist named fresh out of SCAD college. Her name was Alexandra Scott, and she did character sheets for me, and we did a 5-page story, which is the backup one that you hadn't had a chance to see yet.
Right.
We did that. It was meant to just be kind of a preview for the Kickstarter, kind of like showing people just a quick short story. And we weren't successful with that Kickstarter. Learned a lot from it, as you often do.
Yeah.
So then when we came around to do the second one, we weren't gonna be able to. Things couldn't line up for us. I had to find a new artist, and found Joel Jackson, and I could talk about like how we met and everything at some point. But he had just this style that I absolutely loved and wanted for this thing. So when we did this second launch, basically, and it was successful, which was awesome. We decided, let's go ahead and throw that 5-page story in there too, because it was something fun extra to throw in for the readers and everything. So it definitely takes place a bit in the future of what you read in the origin story and everything. So, but yeah, it was like I said, you learn a lot from that first one. The first thing I learned from it was, and I actually got this from somebody at Kickstarter. They were like, well, you made the video and a lot of the information about it about you guys. Like you made it about you as creators and all that. And they said, got news for you. No one cares about who you are. And I was like, okay, that's a very good point. And I'm always open to that. I don't care how harsh the criticism is. You can learn from it. So so they were just like, make it about the story, make it about what people are in for. And they're like, we know you don't want to tell them everything, but you kind of have to tell them almost everything, so they know what they're getting. So we did that, and it was very successful. And then when we were done with that, I was like, okay, I got a lot more story to tell.
Yeah. No, I mean, I guess we're starting in the middle here, but we can give a little background to yourself and what you've been up to in your life, and like where are you coming from, like.
No, for sure. So I've worked a pretty boring job most of my life. I work in customer service, and so that's the job that pays the bills.
Right.
But I've been a comic book collector and reader since most of my life, but got really heavy into it in the 90s is when I really dug deep into comic book reading and everything. And then about 12 years ago, I started doing a podcast, and that came about from just listening to a lot of podcasts and going, I think I'd like to do one of those. And that's pretty much all it takes. But did a lot of research and reached out to people that I knew that did podcasts, and got all the ins and outs that I would need to know technology wise and whatnot. And picked a niche, which was the podcast is called Star Joes, and we cover all the 1980s properties that I grew up with. So
Cool.
Star Wars, GI Joe, Transformers, all that fun stuff, and all of it's alive and well today. So so yeah, we started doing that, and I started having creators on to talk about some of the comics. In fact, the first one we had on was Robert Atkins, and he was drawing GI Joe at the time, and he's done a few things here and there since then. And he reached out to us on our forums that we had at the time and was just like, "Hey, I'm the guy that draws the comic that you're talking about. If you ever want me to come on, I'd be happy to do an interview."
Nice.
And so that was pretty awesome. And he kept coming back on. And next thing we know, like we just made him another host. And he's one of my closest friends now. And so that was awesome. But we've had a lot of creators on talk about stuff related to those properties, and I got to learn a lot more about the business and the industry and everything else. And I took a lot of creative writing classes in high school and college, and always felt I was a pretty good storyteller. And I was like, I feel like I have a story to tell, and I, of course, want to pick comics to do it. So it was a matter of what was the story, where was this going to come from, and that's always the challenge. But my wife has a nickname, which is Stealth Hammer. that is her nickname.
That's funny.
And she's a graphic designer, and the short version of the story is one place that she worked at was an ad agency, and she submitted an idea for a client when everyone else was submitting like 10 ideas, and the client chose hers. And so the next time people were able to submit ideas, her boss was like, "Well, watch out for Stealth." And that became a nickname for her. And then another place she worked at, she was in charge of brand compliance. So she was the one that says, what colors to use, where the logo has to go, things like that. And her boss said, well, she's the one that has to lay the hammer down. And she blended the two names together, and it was Stealth Hammer. And we always joked that it would make a cool superhero. So a few years ago, I was at Baltimore Comic-Con and had an artist draw her for a birthday present as a superhero. And once I saw that, I was like, yeah, this is going to be it. This is the thing that we're going to do. And second I'd made that decision, ideas just started flooding, and I couldn't write them down fast enough. So
right. So welcome to 24 Eyes and Lola Meets. Welcome. That's pretty cool. That's
yeah. So something that started off as just a little funny joke between us turned into a whole superhero tale. But I wanted to include things that I grew up with, like when it came to storytelling. So I relate Stealth Hammer to kind of like if you were to blend some known characters together, the heart of Miss Marvel with the current day Miss Marvel, with the power sets of maybe Iron Fist and Invisible Woman, and then throw that character into a world of Mega Man meets Jim Henson's Creature Shop. So, and that's basically what we're going for.
Now, answer me this. I don't know if I read anything on the Kickstarter page to this effect, but like, it can be read by kids. Like,
yes,
totally,
it's in all ages. It's 100% all ages. Yeah. So, and we made it intentionally for that, because that's really the look and feel that we were going for. I wanted something. So, and I wanted to create something that was all ages, like when I grew up, all ages. Like I mentioned Jim Henson, like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth are all ages movies, but they still have creepy elements.
Yeah.
So I remember we did the character for Stealth Hammer that's named Marzana, and she's in that backup story, and she's in mythology, she's the Polish deity of death. And so there's not a lot out there as far as like artistically about her, and not a lot of like renderings of her and stuff like that. And it was definitely a name I hadn't really heard of used very much at all in the past. So we got to kind of make it our own. But I remember showing it to my wife what Joel came up with for her, and she's just like, wait, this is supposed to be an all ages comic, right? And I go, yeah. She goes, why do you make the character so creepy? I was like, well, it can be creepy. We're just not going to show like blood and gore and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, and especially like stuff is, you know, I grew up on was a lot more daring, and you know, the world's a lot more PC now, so it's like what's acceptable, really?
yeah, for sure. But yeah, like you said, it's definitely meant for all ages. Like we've literally had someone that was age 6 read it, and we've had someone that was age 94 read it, and so we have everyone in between that. So one of the things I say when it comes to the story that I'm writing and creating is like, if you want just a fun escape from reality type story, that you can read this and it'll do that for you. But if you also want to dig a little bit more into it, I do what I've coined the phrase, I call it Claremontian writing, like Chris Claremont. Because he was known for putting like little Easter eggs in his stories and little lines of dialogue that he would then later develop. And that's what I'm doing as well. Like if you look at that very first page of the very first issue, there's a lot going on in that page, but it's also a nice simple page of her sitting in her bedroom and just like typing up on a notepad. But there's stuff going on in the background. There's stuff on the walls and everything else that's like, those are all going to be story elements in the future. So,
yeah. You know, it reminded me a lot of like Back to the Future, kind of.
Yeah.
It's very fast paced.
Yes.
And gets right into all the key points. Yeah. And like I said, her origin, it just jumps right into everything, and it really sets up potential for many stories. Like, you know.
Yeah. And that's the thing we wanted to, like you said, boom right out of the gate. I was like, yeah, there's so much like in comics nowadays, there's so much decompression. Like the story I told in one issue probably could have been spread out over a 4 or 5 issue story arc.
Right.
But no, I wanted to go back to, you know, hey, let's get that origin going. And now in issue 2, we're able to like slow down a little bit. We're able to, you know, start developing these characters and dig into them. But yeah, we just wanted, let's get her origin going, and then we can revisit her origin later on to tell a little bit more of the story as far as what led to that occurring. Because there's things we threw in there. There's Ari the Elf, the little elf guy that like dropped her necklace in there.
Right.
You don't really know why he's there or what's going on, but you find out a little bit more of that in issue 2. So you just know he's there. You're just like, there's this little elf guy there. What's going on? And like, I know he plays a part into how she got her powers, but I don't understand how yet. And so, and I'm okay with that. Like I said, issue 2 is when we delve more into, like, that character becomes a more prominent character in issue 2, and we learn more about him and why he's there and everything. So,
right. So you said you pulled up the Kickstarter page. I mean, we could show people that and the artwork and like what to expect visually.
Absolutely.
And what they'd be getting.
Absolutely. Well, that's always the fun and important thing, right?
Yeah. It's a comic. It's not just a story. It's an adventure.
That's right. All right. So I shared it there. I think you.
Yep. I click on it and get us there.
There we go.
Do this thing.
So yeah, you can see the main page there. I can play the video here. It's a short one, so get that going.
Stealth Hammer #1 told the origin story of Jamie Taylor, a college student who gained superpowers and took on a world of high-tech gadgetry and supernatural mythology as the superhero Stealth Hammer. And this first issue gained a lot of people's attention.
There is a new comic putting a new lady in charge.
Yes, in a world of crazy technology and unexpected superpowers, the Stealth Hammer fights against evil in this new series.
Stealth Hammer is the creation of 45-year-old Ryan Drost.
And then hang tight for a Strongsville man who has all the brownie points in the world because he made a comic based on his wife.
Love it.
We'll talk to him about the Stealth Hammer next.
But that's not how this story ends. In this second issue, we'll meet more enemies, new allies, and discover the legacy of the Guardians she is now a part of. Join us as this journey continues.
So yeah, so that was fun to put together. I was fortunate enough to appear on some news programs and some morning shows and things like that. So I was like, yeah, let's use a little bit of that to create a little bit of fear of missing out.
Yeah, I mean that's cool. It's like I was thinking, like, how much did they pay those announcers? Like,
No, they reached out to me. I reached out to one news channel, and they decided to do a story and then just put it on their website, and it got so much traction that they actually did a full news article and our full news thing
Cool.
that night. They went to my local comic shop, got some B-roll footage. Like, my comic shop contacted me. He's like, "Do you know that the news is here, like, filming stuff for tonight?" And I was like, "No." And then that happened. And then next thing I know, I had, like, Good Day Columbus was calling me up saying, "Hey, we'd like to have you on." And they had me on for National Superhero Day. So we got to talk about it then.
Mhm.
Yeah. So those were all clips from things that actually happened. And it was just like, it's one of those things, like, you never expect those things to happen, but man, it's a lot of fun when they do. So,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
yeah. But yeah, so we got the main cover here. This was again drawn by Joel Jackson, who is I live in Cleveland area. He lives in Columbus, so we're both Ohio guys. And like I
Right.
said, he just has this cool cartoony style, but it's super detailed. It's got a little bit of an anime or manga influence to it, but it was just perfect for what I really wanted for this series. And this is really giving a glimpse into her lineage. Like I mentioned, she's part of a legacy of heroes, and she discovers more about that in this second issue. The first issue is really her getting her powers. The second issue is her finding out that, yeah, you're part of a family line of protectors. So
Nice.
some of these characters are exactly who they appear to be. So we do have King Arthur and we do have Thor there in the background. So that was fun because I got to actually play with the original Norse mythology Thor. And of course, when you have a character named Stealth Hammer and you're talking about her family lineage, if it doesn't go back to Thor, you're really doing yourself a disservice. And the character that's in the middle there is actually her grandmother, who disappeared 5 years ago. So it's just like
Cool.
little hints of things to come. So and then we got a page here, and here's where we have Ari the Elf. So that's the main character and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's name is Kyle. Main character's name is Jamie, which is named after my wife. My wife's name is Jamie. And since it's based on her, I figure I might as well go ahead and use her name. And Kyle, the boyfriend, is based on me. So he's a little awkward and clumsy at times. And Ari the Elf, I'll show the inspiration for him once we're done looking at the Kickstarter here. But he comes from Iceland mythology. They have a nice belief in elven culture there and everything. So he's kind of my Yoda character, but he's also my R2 character because he's snarky and wants to do things his way. So some fun there.
Yeah.
This page is right now, it's not colored. I have my colorist Chris Sotomayor is working on this, which is, he's well known in the comic industry as a very accomplished colorist.
Excellent.
I've known him for a while, and he sent me coloring work for this page right here. He's just making a few small changes that I asked him if he'd be willing to make to it. So very lucky to have him. The first issue was done by Ross Hughes, who's also a very accomplished colorist, and you can see some of his work here where we were introducing some of the characters, and those images are from issue 1. It also helps when you have a wife who's a graphic designer. because she can do
Yeah.
things like and blend characters together for you. And then this is the creative team. So we got myself, my wife Jamie is right there next to me. Joel Jackson is the one right next to her. And then Chris uses that image, that cartoony image for himself. That's our colorist. Dave Sharp is our letterer. He's on the bottom row there as the rocker that you see there, and he's also a long time in the industry. Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He's super nice, but man, he can just overnight I would get my entire issue lettered. I was like, okay.
Wow.
he's a workhorse. So yeah. And then Chrissy Zulo, I reached out to her because I have been a fan of her artwork for years now, and I always wanted to work with her, get something done by her, and what better thing to do than have her do the variant cover for me. And you'll see her artwork as we scroll down a little bit, and what she did, I was just blown away. She sent me what she wanted to do, and I'll mention that when we get to her cover. And I was like, yes, please do that. Let's go. And and then the last one is a good buddy of mine, Scott Kruger. He does a podcast, and he's been getting into the comic world. He recently did a variant cover for Star Wars Adventures, and he reached out to me. He's like, I would love to do something for you. And I was like, well, I like doing cover to cover artwork for people, so would you be willing to do a image for the back cover? And he was like, yeah, I'd be honored. So, and we'll see his work in a little bit too. So this is Chrissy's artwork, and she reached out to me with a rough sketch that looked along the lines of this, and she goes, I really love the story with her and the wolf rats in the background and everything else. She goes, I like the idea of her being ready to fight, but also looking a little intimidated by, not knowing what to expect, or there might be things around her. She goes, are you good with this, or do you want just like the traditional like hero shot? And I was like, no, let's go with this. I like this because there's almost like a whole story just in this one image.
Yeah, I use that for the cover of this video, so it's like I love that piece. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, and it's funny too because she sent it to me, and then she's like, I think I'm going to play around with it a little bit more. And I was like, oh, it looks amazing. And she goes, yeah, there's just something. And what she did was she added the little power highlights on her sleeve and on her leg here and everything else. And yeah, when she sent it to me, I was like, yeah, I'm glad you played with it a little bit more because it looks even better now.
Right.
And then this is the back cover done by Scott, and had a little bit of tweaks that we did with it, but I like what he came up with there. Just like this cloudy, dark scene. And I told him, I was like, a lot of the story in the future is going to be taking place in Iceland and a lot of these mystical places. So he just did this shot where he really wanted her to pop out and everything. So
awesome.
And then always like to show where the money's going. I can tell people 100% of the money is not going to me.
Yeah.
It is going, a large portion that's going to my creative team. I have especially after talking to so many creative people over the years, I truly believe in paying people for the quality work that they do and making sure that they're getting paid fair prices and everything else. So large portion of this is going to them. Obviously, you always have your shipping costs, your printing costs, other rewards that have to be produced. And then, of course, there's always fees and taxes and stuff like that. So
yeah.
We did do add-ons, and I wanted people to be able to tailor things towards what they wanted. This art book, I'll actually show it once we exit out of this. But the art book, this was something my wife and I did for the first Kickstarter, and people really loved it. We loved working on it. We probably put as much time into this art book as we did the actual comic. And it was just hours and hours of her and I sitting in front of a computer, and it's got concept art and it's got progression of a page from script all the way to the final lettered page, which that was really cool to do. And just every character develop, how the characters develop, how we change them. So like I said, if you're someone that likes behind the scenes type stuff of like, I like seeing concept art and where did that character come from and things like that, it's a 48-page hardcover book that just like it's small, but it's mighty. Like I was just looking at the other day and I was like, wow, we packed a lot in here for people. It's pretty cool.
I'm always impressed with like Disney art books, you know.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
That sounds like very, you know. Is that figurine exist? Like, where's
Yes.
that from?
Yes, that is actually the inspiration for Ari. I'll show him again when we get on the bigger screen again, but he's right here. So he is.
Cool.
I found him in Iceland. My wife and I were fortunate and blessed to take a trip to Iceland a few years ago, and I started learning a lot about the mythologies that are out there. Just enjoying the trip, but kind of learning some stuff, and some of those things then made their way into my greater story. And Ari the Elf was one of them. And he was just sitting in a shop, and I saw him, and he had this like, I love the hat because it's got this Where's Waldo vibe to him. So we had some fun with that in the first issue. There's a couple spots that people probably don't notice that he's even standing in the scene, but he's in the first issue a little bit more than people might realize. And yeah, I was like, that's my character right there. And brought him home. And I've made comments that I'll, like, to my wife, I'm like, maybe I'll take him with me to conventions. He can sit at the table. And she's like, yeah. And then if someone swipes him, you'll never be able to get it again. I was like, oh, you make a very good point.
Just bring a picture of him.
Right. Exactly. I don't think we're gonna be flying back to Iceland anytime soon to get another one. So. And then we did do T-shirts this time because I had a lot of people last time say like, "Oh, it'd be cool to do like a T-shirt with like the characters on it and stuff." So this is all original artwork, just made for the T-shirt. So
nice.
We did get a prototype recently made to make sure it would look like it does in the mock-up there, and it came out really great. And then people can still get issue 1, so we didn't want to leave anyone out. We have issue 1 available. So there's some packages where you can get issue 1 and issue 2. Including the main cover and the variant cover. The variant cover was done by my buddy Robert, who I mentioned earlier, Robert Atkins, and
right.
he did a phenomenal job. The back cover art for that one was done by Shannon Gallant, who's also been in the industry for a while. He's now the longest running artist on G.I. Joe: Real American Hero. So,
cool.
Yeah. So that was, and I've known him for a long time too. So he was, I was very fortunate that he would do the back cover for that one. But you can also add, if issue number 1 is not in the package that you're interested in, you can still get issue number 1 as an add-on, and there's no extra shipping. I made sure all the add-ons did not add any shipping to your costs. So, and then something fun we did was we did a digital coloring book. We already had the black and white artwork, so we started pulling stuff out of the black and white inked artwork digitally, and we made coloring books. And we're going to do a coloring book for issue number 2, and you can get issue number 1's coloring book, and it's digital. So if you want to color digitally, you can, but it's also formatted, so it'll print on regular standard paper. And so that was fun. So that was it as far as that.
Yeah, any kids that are into the story, they definitely love a coloring book.
Oh yeah, and that was the idea behind it. We're like, okay, this is a nice, inexpensive thing that we can do, but man, we had so many people that got that first one. They would print off pages and they would color it and send us pictures of it, and that was so much fun to see what people colored and everything. So
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, it's meant to be all ages. So let's make it fun for the kids to do something after they're done reading it and looking through it and everything. So, but we've got every monetary level you can imagine. Like if you just want digital, you can get that for $5. You can get the comic for $7, and that will give you both the physical comic plus the digital comic for the $7 there. You can get the digital coloring book for another $5. The one that I recommend to a lot of people is the combo packs, because the combo packs, you are getting a lot for your money. So if you want just the combo pack for number 2, you're getting the main cover, the variant cover, the coloring book, the digital copy of both of the comic, along with the physical both physical versions. You're getting 4 mini prints. They're 5x5 by 8x5 or 8.5, 5.5 by 8.5. and then you get a bookmark
Right.
as well. And it's a front and back bookmark done just for that particular Kickstarter. So, and then if you want to do the combo pack for both of them, for both issue 1 and 2, we have that available for $60. So you're just doubling it, but you're getting double the amount of stuff. You're getting main cover, variant covers for both issues. You're getting 9 mini prints. You're getting 2 bookmarks. You're getting coloring book for both issues. I mean, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck. And then, the higher stuff, you can get we have the t-shirt available. We also have, one of the things that I also did that was a lot of fun for me, is we have where you can get an annotated script. So what I do is I take the script and then I put notes in the margin as far as like what we were on every single page, like what we were going for in a certain scene, what are things to look for, where did this character come from, things like that. So I personalized the script.
That's cool.
Yeah. And then Joel is drawing. He's doing some. We have 7 backers. There's 3 left for it, but he will do a commission for you, a nice paper commission, and he goes to town on them, and he will do any character you want. He's even done stuff of people. So like, hey, can you draw my brother doing this? And he'll do that. And speaking of people, the top one is that you can actually be in the comic. And last time we had 4 characters that were in the comic. We're gonna have 4 characters this time, and you get all of the rewards that were previous to it. Plus, you get to be in the comic. Plus, you get credited for being in the comic, so you'll be in the inside credits. And the fun thing with that is that once you're also in the comic, Joel's really good at doing likeness and stuff. But your character might turn into a character I like and I use again in the future. So you might appear in more than just one issue. So we definitely had that with this one. The agents that were in the first issue, the Men in Black type agents that we saw, they make an appearance back in this issue, and I got to play with them a little bit more and actually develop their personalities a little bit more. So that was a lot of fun. And those were backers. They were just people that backed it to be in the comic last time. And I was like, yeah, I like them a lot. I'm going to bring them back for this issue. So
cool.
So those are fun. But that's the Kickstarter. And then let me, so yeah, again, this was Ari the Elf right there. He was a fun little find, and he became part of the story. And
That's
then
awesome.
this is the art book that I was showing before, and I can show you some of the inside pages that were really cool. So you can see there's black and white there of one of the pinups. You can see some of the concept art. Here's some more concept art there. You can see like the creation of the evil uncle that was in the first issue and everything. So like I said, we packed quite a bit in there. One of the things we also put in there was artwork that was maybe not prominent in the first issue. So in the first, on the inside cover credits page, there was a commission piece that I had done by Dean Kotz, who is starting to make a nice name for himself. And I had him draw the character. Again, I was at Baltimore Comic-Con, had him draw it and everything else. And then I reached out to him because it was really just meant to be a commission for me. And I thought it'd be a cool piece to put on the inside cover. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, I know that you only drew this for me and everything else, but here's what I'm doing. Would you mind if I use this as the inside credits page? And he was super nice. He's like, yeah, it's yours. You do what you want. He says, but I really appreciate you asking me. And this is the artwork he did. This is beautiful watercolor.
Right. Nice.
So that's inside the art book as well. But yeah, so I've been blessed being a first-time writer of comics and everything else. I surrounded myself with a lot of talent.
Yeah. I think it's important to mention that something you didn't even touch on. There's 3 days left.
Yes.
And you're shooting for 9,000 and it's 8,000 and change.
Yeah, we need $779 to go. And yeah, it will end on November 21st which is this coming Sunday.
Right.
10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we are very close. We're at 91%.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for mentioning that because that's critical.
Well, I mean, the good thing is usually with crowdfunding, like the last couple of days gets a hike.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you should smooth right through it. Fingers crossed.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, you never know until you know that.
Right.
You know.
Well, we were
But-
we were blessed the first time. We had 181 backers for the first issue.
That's
We're
great.
up to 124 backers for this one. So we're getting a nice amount of backers that are coming back and a lot of new people too, which I'm very pleased to see. But yeah, you better believe I'll be sending out updated messages to all the past Kickstarters like, hey, we're almost there. If you want to see the story continue, now is the time to get in on this. So
Yeah, it's you know, I mean, I've seen plenty of Kickstarters, and it always seems like the second issue is a little more work.
yeah.
You know, the first one is like all your family and friends come out of the woodwork, and oh, you got a book? Oh, let me check that out. You know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I had everyone coming out because they're like, oh, because they knew this was a dream of mine, and that's really
Right.
that's what this is. This whole story is like a dream come true. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, and I feel like a lot of creators feel this way. Is like when that first issue showed up at my house. I mean, we're talking like real tears. You know, like
No.
you finally get to hold it, and you're like, wow, this actually became something. So
Yeah. I mean, like with me, you know, like I'm working on my character retro first issue. This is a character you know, like me and my friend hang out in the woods years ago.
Yep. Oh,
When
yeah.
I was much younger, just like goofing off, and we created our own characters off the top of our heads, and
Yeah.
later drew them out. And I've thought about them throughout the years, and finally getting around to, you know, it's like I've only been in the business 30 years, so you know, I'm still new to this. So like it's just, yeah, I'm literally on the last 4 pages to ink.
Nice.
And there's everything else, but I feel like, you know, I mean, I'm mostly known as an inker, so like for me to get to the end of the inking stage is, you know, it's like, oh, now it's becoming serious.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's the thing too. Like you were saying, I've got there is a story that I've had since I was like 16 years old, and that's obviously not the one that I'm doing right now. But I was like, yeah, depending on where life takes me, and you know, I'm working hard to for this to be the thing that I do. You know, thankfully I've got a lot more stories to tell, but and a lot more with this one. But like you said, yeah, definitely working harder on the second one. I have appeared on more shows this time than I ever needed to last time.
Yeah.
So, and I was thrilled when you reached out to me and said, hey, you know, would you like to come on and talk about it? I was like, yeah, let's look. I was like, okay, I could fit a week if we can do this is when I'm available. And you're like, well, would this work? And I'm like, that's perfect. Let's just go with that.
Yep.
My wife's like, you're crazy, because I'm doing your show, and then I've got my own podcast I'm doing later tonight, and I've got another show even later than that. And I'm just like, we're in the home stretch. I got to get on as many shows as I possibly can get on, and hopefully people like what they're seeing, and hopefully it's something that they want to support and check out. So
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's like then you can relax a little bit next week, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll sleep for 2 days after this.
You know, it's like, I know how it is. It's but hey, you got to do what you got to do. And you know, it's like the internet. It's like you could reach out everywhere, but really, like with algorithms and different sites and everything, it's a real hustle. It is. You know.
Well, and that's the thing. The first issue, like I said, we were very successful with it. We had a lot of outpouring for it and everything else, but I still had, I can't even count how many people I had that reached out to me afterwards, and like I said, I would post about how, oh, I was on this news show or on that thing, and I had people going like, I didn't know you did a comic. I was like, where were you? I was posting about it every day. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, you know, and I'm sure you feel like, oh man, I'm just talking about it all the time. It's like I don't want to annoy people, and but the reality is that they're lucky if they see one post during your 30 days or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Well, and that's the thing I found out after doing the first one was like I had so many people that didn't know that, and when I did a little bit more research, I found out from people that have been doing it a while. They're like, yeah, you think you're annoying everybody, but really the odds of them seeing one or two of your posts are, you know, you might have a few people that see it all the time, but those are the people that usually see all your stuff anyways and are probably supporting you anyways. So, but the ones that normally don't see your stuff, you know, even though you post, like you said, you post maybe once a day or twice a day or something like that, they may have maybe saw one of them. So you have to put
So I don't know if you have one, but I hear the trick is like getting a mailing list.
Yeah, so that's going to be the new thing. So yeah, I definitely need to do that. So one of the things, I didn't do any conventions this past year, just being extra cautious. Just because being extra cautious this year. My wife's actually immune compromised, so we were just being, you know, a little extra cautious about going out to large public events. But the plan is for me to be out there next year. And in fact, I already have things lined up that I'll be appearing at Fan Expo Cleveland. So, so I'm excited about that because it'll be a nice size show and everything. But one of the things I'm going to do at the shows, along with having my mailing list from the Kickstarters, is I'll have something at the table where it's like if people, you know, like they can put their email address down and they can get a nice little newsletter, lets them know what's going on with Stealth Hammer and when things are coming up and everything else. And I've seen a lot of people do that, and it's a really smart way of kind of building up that fan base for you. So
you know, advice I hear is like have something like you put it out there like, hey, sign up for my mailing list. But like people want things. It's like, well, you include something with it, and it's like I'm gonna build one myself, and I have a little story that I'll be offering. So
well, one of the things I'll probably be doing, because I'll have, you know, again, it's inexpensive, but people love it, is like I'll have the bookmarks, I'll have the mini prints. So maybe, you know, if they sign up, they get a mini print to take home with them. So pick the one they want and stuff. So yeah, for sure. You know, and then I've also had it where just to draw the kids in and I did this at a small event I went to where someone I knew was kind enough to let me set up at a toy convention, the toy sale shop, which of course no one was there looking for comics. But it was a nice way for me to test the waters and everything else. And what I did was those digital coloring book that I was showing, I printed off a lot of those pages and I was giving those away for free. If someone wanted to take a coloring book page home, they could. And so it brought some of the kids in, you know, they were like, oh, and I was like, you can pick whichever one you want. I had like 2 or 3 different characters that they could take one home and color. So
that's cool. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing greater than meeting kids at either conventions or store signings or whatever. Like they're just like huge eyeballs and like, oh wow, that's amazing. Like,
you know? Well, that's the thing. We got the banner to put up behind me that's got all the, you know, it's got the main cover from the first issue, which has got all those amazing characters on it, and it's bright and it catches your eye. And so I got a nice setup that I think will really catch especially the kids' eyes, because you know, as much as anyone of any age can read this and enjoy it, of course, you know, it's perfect for a kid that's into this type of stuff and just likes really cool characters and everything else. So it's got something for everyone. It's got robots, it's got, you know, little elf characters, and it's got superheroes. What more could you want?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things we even did was we had a labradoodle, sadly, that passed away a few years ago, And a way to immortalize her is her dog in the first issue. Is her name's Hannah, and we just were like, this is a nice little tribute to her. So we get to put a little personal things in there as well. So
yeah, and it's like I got 3 cats, so I know like pets are important.
Oh yeah. So, well, and that's like we have a new dog now, and I've had people going, well, is she going to make it into the comics? And I was like, yeah, probably eventually. It'll be a way for my 2 dogs that never really got to meet in real life. They get to meet on the comic page. So
yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it's a cool thing when you're at a show and stuff like that. And I already told my wife, I was like, if this keeps going and we keep doing well with it and building that audience and everything else, I said, I'm telling you right now, I'm going to lose my mind if someone ever shows up cosplaying as one of my characters. I will just lose it right there.
Yeah, I mean that happens a lot, especially something that's has a little staying power and a cool outfit,
Yeah,
possibilities are there,
Absolutely. But yeah, I told her, I was like, I will leap over the table and be like, I gotta get a picture with you.
Very cool.
And with my dexterity, I probably won't really leap over the table. I'll probably more like plow the table to the ground.
Or roll over the table.
Yes. But yeah, it's been a fun journey, and that's the thing too. Like even and it's been cool, like pulling stuff from my life and being able to put it in there. Like the tagline of like not only is the character superhero name after my wife, but also the tagline of the character is a line that my wife has used in the past, which is "That's not how this story ends," and it's all it's of course a line meaning never giving up, and
right.
And that's a line my wife has used in real life, and that's where I pulled it from. And I was like, that makes a really cool tagline for a superhero.
So you're not necessarily a writer, you're just taking stuff from life and
just
putting
stealing
it in.
from things left in the there's no originality in the world. I'm just pulling from things that I can pull from. No, it really does. It's the love letter to all the things that I've loved over the years. Like I said, I always loved mythology. I always loved crazy technology type stuff and everything else. I was like, and there's definitely been stories in the past that have blended the two together. And I'm just trying to tell a fun, like I said, it's just trying to tell a fun story. And I've had people that ask me stuff like when I've had some of the interviews and everything else. They're like, oh, your character is a female character. Are you is it you're going for like women empowerment and stuff like that? And I was like, no, my character is literally based on my wife. So my wife's a woman. So that's why the character is a woman. As simple as that. I was like, but if you want to pull, if you read it and you feel like, it's perfect for women empowerment, then that's great. That's everyone pulls something different from stuff. And that's fantastic. But,
yeah. I mean, it's like, what are you going to draw? You're going to write a main character who's like, just weakling and sits on the couch all day and
right.
It's like,
well, and that's the thing too. It's like I know you had someone on not that long ago where they were talking about like there's so much talking that happens in comics nowadays, and those moments are important. It helps develop characters and everything else. But it's like, yeah, let's get back to the fun adventure. And my first issue, she's beating up a giant Volkswagen Beetle that turned into a robot. So, and yes, that was a little nod to Bumblebee from the Transformers. So,
nice.
Just I'm trying to have fun, and I figure if I'm having fun writing this and Joel's having fun drawing it, then hopefully the reader's going to have fun reading it. So,
yeah, I mean that's it's like my philosophy as far as putting together a comic is this is the comic I want to see, therefore that's why I'm making it. It's like,
exactly, 100%. I
want to sit down and read it myself. It's like,
yeah. Well, and I think what happens sometimes is people get so, especially nowadays, they get so wrapped up in like what type of message they want to tell in their story and everything else. And I'm like, those messages and everything else, from everything I've ever experienced, when they come across in a good story, it's because the person focused on the story and not a message they were trying to tell. And the messages come with later, after you're telling that really good story. Again, people can pull stuff from it that they feel they connect with in it, and
it's like you build great characters and like characters that have manners and characters that are like like are good at finance or like different things, and like it adds an added dimension to the story and what's happening, and like you want respectable characters. You kind of put that in there, and that sort of becomes the message. Like
well, and then
don't be a jerk. Don't
right. Well, and you want to make sure every character has their own voice. I mean, like we were talking about with Ari earlier. Like Ari has his own voice. He has his own way of speaking, and I can tell you, he lives in my head now. So I know how Ari's going to talk in the situation, and sometimes that's what happens too. Is you create these characters, and they have their own personality, they have their own way of acting and talking and everything else. They start taking on a life of their own, and sometimes you think you know where the story is going, but then the characters start telling you, no, that's not really where we would go. We would go down this other path. So,
no, most definitely. Like I'm a big fan of Stephen King. I'm not necessarily a horror fan. It's usually like if I read horror or I watch horror, I'm rooting for the people to get out of the situation.
But your point is, he's really, really good at creating those characters, and and that's what brings me in for his writing. Also, it's just like it's cool, the creepy horror elements, but like you can tell he went into it to tell this like compelling story with these characters. Yeah,
he's also like just reliving his nightmares and exercising them at the same time. It's like
that happens too. But yeah, like I said, and one of the things that was funny to do also, and I've been asked this before, is like you've seen how much Joel puts into the pages, and then the coloring work that goes into them and everything else too. And they're like, I've had to go like, does Joel get mad at you for how much you have him drawing? And I was like, you have to understand, I put about 50% of what you see on the page on the script. He draws the rest of it. he just goes to town because he likes doing that. And then he'll do stuff where I didn't have it in the script, but then because I saw what he did, I'm like, well, that's really cool. I really like that. Maybe that then becomes part of the story. So perfect example of that is when, I got it right here where we're looking at on the cover here, we got the doctor and he's got all these little robots all around him. Well, how that happened was he drew a sketch of her dad, which is the Dr. Everett, and he drew a little robot in his shoulder. And I was like, oh, I really like that. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I just thought he would be someone, since he's an inventor type and everything else, that he would have like little robot assistants that help him. And I was like, yeah, I like that. I was like, we should go with that. Next thing I know, I get a cover and there's 8 robots on it floating around them. And I said, you understand I have to make characters of all those things, right? And he's like, no, they could just be like little robots that he's got. And I was like, no, that's not how my brain works. These are all now characters in the story. I have to figure out personalities for all of them.
You're right.
I got to give them names. But the cool thing is then I got inspired to do that. So I actually, all 8 of them have names. They're a group collectively known as the Labites. So they work in his lab, and they all have their name ends in byte, just like the computer. And so I had fun figuring out, okay, what's their functions just based on his drawing. I was like, okay, looking at this character, what do I think this robot does? And I I've related them to the old movie that not a lot of people remember, but Batteries Not Included, where it was like these little robots that were aliens that came down and they fixed things. Like that's what my labites do. They're not aliens, but they were created by the doctor there, and they just kind of help him with his inventions and when things have to get fixed and stuff. Because in that first issue, his lab explodes. Well, we can't leave his lab. We can't leave the lab exploded.
Especially it's in his house, so it's like
right, exactly. So so in issue 2, we actually we get introduced to the labites, and they're working on fixing the damage. So
I remember that movie. Batteries Not
Yeah.
Included. Was that Ali Sheedy? Maybe.
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
The as you can imagine, the special effects don't hold up as well nowadays, but
Yeah. they'll make a remake.
oh yeah, just give it enough time. There's certain movies I would love to see them do remakes of, because I think nowadays the technology would be amazing. Like I would love to see The Last Starfighter redone nowadays, because
I think a lot of people would, because I hear that every now and then. It's like, yeah, I would definitely love to see it.
yeah. Another one that's a lesser known one, I loved it growing up, but watching it now, I still love it for nostalgia. But it's not a good movie. Like it's not put together well or executed well. But is Krull, where he's got the glaive thing, where it's like a star type thing that he can throw out and everything.
Yeah.
I love that movie when I was a kid. I watched it now. I'm like, I still love it, but it's not good, and it could definitely be remade today, and it would be amazing. So,
yeah, it's stuff like that. It's like, who has the property, and do they want to do anything with it?
Absolutely. I've got a list like that too, where I was like, man, if I do have this turn into hopefully a career of writing and stuff like that, I've got my list of properties that I would love to be able to tap into that maybe no one's thought of tapping into, or like you said, maybe they just can't get the rights to it. But yeah, there's definitely a list of like, oh, I'd like to continue this story or keep going down this path. So
yeah, and it's a lot of the smaller publishers or the big indie publishers, I should say, take on properties, licenses, and make books out of characters and movies and whatnot, TV shows.
Yeah.
I was just somebody brought up Bionic Man the other day, and I was like,
yeah.
Do you remember Automan? And he's like, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw for the $6 Million Man, they're coming out with, one of my buddies sent me because he was a big fan of it growing up. They're coming out with a wrestling action figure for Bigfoot. So they're actually taking the Bigfoot look, but they're putting it on a wrestling action figure. And he's like, I gotta own that when it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything that potentially would bring in money, how Hollywood works and all that.
For sure. Well, that's like when I was growing up, I never really played like Dungeons and Dragons. But for me as a kid, Dungeons and Dragons was the cartoon that was in the 80s. That's the Dungeons and Dragons I grew up with.
Yeah,
and I know IDW has the rights to Dungeons and Dragons, the game and books and everything else. And I was like, I wonder if they have the rights to the cartoon, because I was like, that would be an easy thing that would hit nostalgia for a lot of people. Just do a mini series that was based on the old cartoon that continued the story that they never got to finish. They never got to finish it in the cartoon. It got canceled.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure maybe not. I don't know. Like my brother's Jimmy Palmiotti, So my sister-in-law is Amanda Connor.
Yep. And
back in the day, like I think pretty early on and in a relationship, she was working on Gargoyles, the Disney cartoon comic book version.
Yep.
And I got to fill in some blacks, do a little background work or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, I love that cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a very well done cartoon. And like, again, something that was like on the surface level seemed like it was, just a fun little action Disney cartoon, but man, they started digging into Shakespeare and everything else in that series, and it was quite impressive. So
Yeah, it's always good when it becomes something more than just fluff.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. Like that's what I'm trying to do with my comic is, I'm starting off small. We, like you said, that first issue, we just come out. She gets her powers. She has to take on a threat and everything. But I've always loved the stories where you start small like that, and the world just keeps growing. So like anything like Alice in Wonderland, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, as the book goes.
Right.
Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz, Labyrinth, like you said, Dark Crystal, those types of things. I always loved it because you started with that one your main character, and then as you keep going into the story, that world just keeps building on itself and starts spreading out. And the second issue for my comic really gives you an idea of how big this world is potentially going to get. So there's nice little nods to it. We're going to have a double page spread in it that is really showing like, here's the legacy that she's a part of. And I think it's going to give fans a treat. That was one of the fun things too, is I joked with Joel about is after we did, because I met him through my wife reached out to some old classmates that she went to school with and said, hey, does anyone know an artist that does comic books? And this is the type of style Ryan's looking for. And one of her old classmates says, yeah, my friend Joel does them. And he sent me a link to his work. And I turned to my wife and I was like, this is the guy. This is the guy we need on this. He's done amazing work. But after we were done with the first issue, I told him, I was like, okay, you're in trouble now. And he goes, why am I in trouble? I says, well, because now I know what you can do.
Yeah. And it is really like visually, like, yeah, it's definitely like you nailed it. It's a great job. It looks great. He does really good work. And I mean, that's important, it's like, that's how you sell it,
Right. Yeah. It's cool because him and I we have a very like-minded mentality when it comes to this. Like we're both dreamers, but we're both realistic too. Like I've had people say, well, if you could have this go wherever you wanted it to go, they were like, what's the dream? And I was like, well, the dream is, the best way I could describe it, the dream is like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles level dream. You start off as a small independent thing, and then everyone around the world knows what it is by the time you're done. I said, that's the dream. I said, but that's the dream, not for the reason that some people think. I was like, I wouldn't want that dream for the fame and fortune. I mean, I'll take all of that. Don't get me wrong. But, but really the idea, the dream for me is that if something I created reached that many people, like to have my story touch that many people and that many people enjoy it, like that's the dream for me.
Yeah, I mean, like really when it comes to independent comics and independent publishers, I mean, we're all like mostly just like one people machines. And it's like it's a lot of work.
It is.
So anything that helps us continue. So like if the only thing that happens is that you can continue it, perfect,
Yeah 100%. Well, and that's the thing too, like one of my favorite things I did, because I didn't go to conventions for a long time until I started doing the podcast 12 years ago. I had never really been to a comic convention before that. I loved comics, I loved reading them, I just never went. And then once I started going, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And one of my favorite things to do right off the bat was going down Artist Alley. Just seeing the work that people came up with, because it was I love mainstream comics. I love, Marvel and DC stuff and everything else. I absolutely love that. And I read tons of that stuff to this day, but there's just something about reading something that is not predictable and is not, because let's face it, Batman's always going to survive.
Right.
You can have a fun time reading the adventure, but he's going to survive. It's really cool to see something that people are really passionate about. And that's been a nice compliment that I've gotten about what I'm doing. Is I get people that hear me talk about it and they're like, I can tell you're really passionate about this, like that this means something to you. And it's so cool to see that in other people. Like that's really when you get to come together as a community, when people are like all passionate about the things that they're doing. And like you said, they just want to continue doing it. They just want to continue telling their story.
Yeah.
It gets really exciting.
Yeah, it's like before I got into reading books on my own, like my parents bought me a set of like those thin hardcovers of Hardy Boys.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I really got into them. It's like it's wholesome fun.
Yeah.
Like, they were getting into trouble all the time, but like, it's like they went on adventures, they did things, and they discovered things, and they also like gave real tips and like it was just it's like
I grew up with old Doc Savage books that my dad had. So
there you go.
Yeah, so I was reading those when I was really young. And then one of the things I think I was fortunate to have a realization of was when I was younger was, you had the books you had to read in school, and like so many people would be like, "Oh, I don't want to have to read this," and I started really enjoying those books. Like they're classics for a reason,
Oh yeah.
And so there was things that really, unfortunately, I had teachers too that like really made it interesting. So, I had a teacher that taught us, William Shakespeare plays, and he would put it in just common language. He would read to us what it said, and then he would say, "Well, here's what that means," but he would say it in a way that we understood.
Yeah.
So that was always fun. But then we read stuff like Lord of the Flies and Edgar Allan Poe stuff, and I was like, okay, this stuff's really cool. Like there's if you take the school part out of it, where you're being forced to read it, you can actually enjoy this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like that's what it comes down to. Like, having the teachers that really reach and touch you, like that spark your imagination. And it's like, no, like look past that, or like they really define it in a certain way that like, oh, I get it now.
Yeah. Well, and I had a teacher when I was in my senior year of high school. She was my English teacher, and when we would read something when we were done with the book, we had a choice of either multiple choice test or doing an essay, and I didn't get a choice. She saw something in my writing, and she's like, "You're going to write essays."
Nice.
So on one hand, you're like, "Oh man," but looking back on it, and even then, I realized why she was doing it. But especially looking back on it, I was like, she wanted to foster something she saw in me. So
yeah,
so that was very cool.
That's important,
Yeah. And those are the teachers you always remember. You look back on fondly, and you're like, yeah, that's the one that pushed me a little bit more. That's the one that encouraged me or inspired me in some way. And
yeah, I could pinpoint like maybe 5 teachers that really, went above and beyond, or at least it seemed from my perspective, it's like, well, why, what am I? I'm not special. I'm just another student of yours, right?
But they see something. I actually had, after the first issue was done, I actually had one of my high school teachers reach out to me.
Nice.
And he was just like, he sent me an email, and he's just like, I don't know if you remember me. And he was he taught English and everything else, but he also was in charge of the drama club. And I got involved in drama club, and that's how I got to know him and everything. And he was fantastic. Like everyone loved him. And he was just very encouraging, and he had high energy, and he was just awesome. He helped you to become the best you could be in what you were wanting to do. And he reached out to me, and he was just like, to see you create something like this, he's like, it warms my heart to see that. So, and that's one thing that's cool too, is like, like I was mentioning, like, I feel like a lot of people that you see in Artist Alley and everything else, you're creating your own thing there. And like, these are things you always dreamed of doing, and you're finally making it happen. And I've had so many people that saw what I did and knew that it was a dream of mine. They're like, it's awesome to see you pursue your dream, because I think a lot of times people don't even take that step to try. So
yeah, I mean, there's tons of reasons for every individual out there like that don't go through it. You know, like plenty of people start. You know, whatever knocks them down, life, job, kids, whatever. You know, it's like
no, and I know on a past episode of yours where someone was talking about like it's so easy. I think you even said it's so easy to say no. It's just easy to be like, no, not going to do that because it's just easier.
It's a lot of work. Not my thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, you know, it's like I definitely think like you got to be a little insane to do this.
Oh, sure.
Even on the side, it's like because it consumes a lot of time. I mean, it's more, you know, there's so many layers to it. To creating a book from cover to cover that, you know, it's like Hollywood is always spoken about like there's movie magic and all that, and it's like, you know, the trick to creating a really great comic is to make it look like, you know, it was effortless.
yeah, for sure. Well, and that's something too that I've talked with some people about before in the past too. I was like, no matter where technology goes, you know, whether we're doing CG movies or you're doing traditional animation or you're doing a comic book or you're doing live action movies or whatever, you always need storytellers. You always need someone to create the story that people are going to see. So technology can go wherever it wants. You still have to go back to that basic thing of a story needs to be told, and someone has to come up with that. And so
absolutely.
I don't think a computer will be able to do that. At least not, and hopefully not in my lifetime.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Since you put out your first book, have people come up to you and said, you know, I'm interested in doing something like that?
Yes. I've had people that tell me that they have stories they want to tell, and my advice to them was then go do it. I mean, because that's the hardest part, I think, for a lot of people is just to get started. And then I tell them, and then don't stop until you're done. Even if it's not perfect, don't feel like you have to make it perfect. Just get it done. And then you can go back and make changes and everything. I've told people many times, I'm like, my scripts go through 5-6 changes before I abandon it, and it's not. I don't even consider them done. I just had to finally, okay, this got to go to the artist.
Tell me about it. I had, you know, it's like I gave my penciler barely a plot. And he created 28 pages of artwork. And I've sort of sat down at various points and came up with a bunch of ideas and possible, you know, dialogue, and, you know, but I was like, I'm not going to do a final script until I have all the pages inked, and I'm going to make copies of all the pages and put them on the wall and just sort of pace it out, like look at it and sort of pace it out, and okay, I know exactly what I want at that point. You know, it's like, it is really like nothing is final, nothing is set in stone until you actually put it out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then and one of the things I do, how I write my story, is I do what I call a writer's storyboard. So I actually take a piece of paper, and instead of like drawing out a storyboard, I actually put like, you know, rectangles on there that represent each page, and I write little outline type notes of what's going to happen on that page. And then I go back and I circle and I go, okay, this is going to be one panel. This is going to be another panel. Okay, let's take that part out. That doesn't make any sense. And then, okay, maybe this needs to go over on this page over here. And I do all of that. So I get an idea of my pacing. I get an idea of what might be on that page. I also get an idea of like, how many panels I'm going to need. So this way I'm not trying to put 3 actions into one panel, which you can't do. So I get to do all that, and then I get to finally take those pieces of paper that have that layout, and then I finally sit down and start writing a script, and then I just write. And it doesn't matter how long I'm writing. It doesn't matter if I got the grammar right, if I got the dialogue, descriptions, all that. I just write it all out based off of that storyboard that I did, and then I go back, and that's when I start making the tweaks, and that's when I start making the changes. And okay, that character wouldn't say it that way. Here's how they would say it.
Right.
And then I have other people that read it, and then they come back with things, and then it just keeps changing. But the important thing is I sat down and finally started doing it, and then making all the changes I needed to after that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've been thinking of is, I want to find my character's specific voice.
Yeah.
Because you can almost take any comic, a lot of comics out there, and it's interchange the characters with the same words.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's it doesn't really matter. They really have no individual personality.
Yeah.
I remember reading, when you mentioned Chris Claremont.
Yeah.
Remember reading X-Men, and one of my favorite characters was Banshee because he had such a different voice.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's I love Banshee. I don't know why, but
well, and I think a big part of being able to write those characters a unique way is knowing what their motivations are, what's behind them. So with my characters, I've got Jamie, she's got that adventurous spirit, and she gets that from her grandmother, and so I keep that in mind when I'm going to be writing her grandmother later on. But she's also got the technical side from her dad and everything else. So I'm blending those characters together, but she's got that never give up attitude, and she's gonna get knocked down quite a few times, but I don't want to lose that. She's my Peter Parker character. No matter how bad she's knocked down, she's got to come back. But then I've got her dad, who's he cares about her. He puts others before himself. So that's his core personality, and he talks in that manner. She's got her uncle, who is out for himself. So that's his core. That's a core element of him that plays into how he talks. I've got Ari the Elf. Like I said, he's this mentor, snarky little guy. I've got Watts is the robot that you see on the cover of the first issue. She gets introduced into this issue. She's proper. She's logical. She's a robot. So she's gonna talk differently. So, but I can write all them differently and have them all sound differently because I know what all their motivations are. I know what parts of their personalities are. And like you said, there's so many comics out there where you could swap characters out because we don't really know what their motivations are. We don't know what their personality is. So it doesn't matter who's saying what because it just doesn't come across that in their actual character development.
Yeah. So we covered a lot. Other than that, people should check out your Kickstarter and pledge now as opposed to later, so that it succeeds. Share it out, all that good stuff.
I greatly appreciate any support that comes out there. Yeah, absolutely.
Anything you want to mention before we go?
No, other than I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate any support that's out there. If you want to hear me ramble more about other things, you can always check out my podcast as well, which is Star Joe's, and it's like Star in Star Wars and Joe's as in G.I. Joe. So we have a lot of fun, and when you're ready to start promoting stuff, I'd be happy to have you on there, and we can talk some more. So
that would be excellent, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So everybody go check out the project. The Kickstarter link is down below. Share it out with your friends and your audience. That's always helpful. I try to do that for as many people because this is work. This is so much work just to promote and get the word out. In many ways, it's half the battle. Creation is one thing. That's almost the easy job. Promotion is a whole other thing.
Whole new
marketing,
level.
all that. Yeah. Thank you everybody for checking this out. Those that came here live, definitely appreciate it. Those that will be watching later, hopefully you'll listen to this before Sunday and give the project a look. Definitely. I have another guest tomorrow night, Timothy Fling, he's been on here before. He'll be talking about his newest issue to his universe tomorrow night. And yeah, I'm cranking away on my comic for 4 pages to go. So I'm hoping to finish it this weekend, the inks. I got other projects and things I'm doing for everybody else. So it's like I gotta finish this now.
Yeah, it's looking awesome. So
thanks. Appreciate it. Yeah, everybody have a great night. And we'll talk again soon. Make comics and art, because that's what life is about.